Hi everyone, welcome to the last video in the CMAT Innovation and Entrepreneurship series. Let's get started. So the first question says, arrange the following stages of design thinking in the correct order. Now design thinking is a methodology in which it's a problem solving methodology but more used in the context of developing a particular product or a service. So there are 5 elements to it or 5 steps. You have to put them in the right order. Prototype, define, empathize, test, and ideate. Now let's say you are somebody who has not heard of design thinking, but think of how can you logically put things into perspective. So the first is prototype. Now will you suddenly create some prototype? No, you have to understand what the problem is. So that is why defining the problem will happen before you create the prototype, correct? So B will obviously be prior to A. If you see any option where that is not the case, you can start eliminating those options. Empathize. Now empathize is understanding what exactly the problem is, right? So you're talking to people, you're empathizing with them, and that is what empathize is all about. Test. Will you test anything if it is not present? Do you need to have some sort of a thing to test it out, right? So you need to have a prototype before you test it. And finally, ideate. Now to create a prototype or to do the testing, you have to ideate as well, correct? So if you think of it, you will be able to arrive at the answer. But let's now look at the actual steps. What is the logical order here? So this is the cycle. It starts with empathizing, correct? So empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. That is the order in which it moves. So you start with empathizing. You talk to, let's say, people who are facing a particular problem. You understand the context in which that problem is being faced. Then you define that particular problem in a nice manner. Once you do that, you come up with different ideas. So in design thinking, there is a saying that at the ideation stage, you come up with all possible ideas and you don't criticize them. Let people come up with ideas and then you finally evaluate. Once you have an idea, you create prototype and then you test it out. If let's say that does not work, again you go back and figure out, okay, can we do some other idea, and then create a prototype for that and then test it out. Okay, so that is the design thinking methodology. I think there was a question related to this in one of the past year papers as well, so it's an important concept. Let's move to question 2. Which of the following is an example of a speculative financial risk? Okay, now think of speculation. What does the word speculation mean? It means that you are trying to guess something, that this is what is going to happen. Of course, it may not be complete blind guess. You may have some data and all of that, but you are saying that okay, this particular stock will go up or it will go down, etc. That is what speculation is. The first says a marketing campaign fails to attract new customers. Okay, not related to speculative financial risk. A supplier delayed shipment disrupting operations. Again, not finance risk. This is an operational risk that you have. C says a company's stock investment results in significant losses. Right. So this is the answer that we are looking for. Option C. Okay. Let's move to next one. Question 3. How is Six Sigma unique in quality management? Now, Six Sigma, I'm sure all of you have heard this term at some point of time. Mumbai Dabbawalas, for example, that's the most famous example of what Six Sigma methodology is. So, Six Sigma, the word sigma stands for standard deviation. Okay, it's a statistical concept, and that Six Sigma is basically trying to say that what you're trying to achieve is a quality at a level where you have very minimal defects. Okay, now there is a number also for the permissible defects within the Six Sigma methodology. So first says focuses only on customer service. No, you are trying to improve customer service, but that is not the only focus of it. Second says avoids quantitative quality measures. It says avoids. Now Six Sigma, as I said, sigma is standard deviation, it's a statistical concept. Clearly you are doing quantitative stuff, you are not going away from it, so you can eliminate B as well. C says uses statistical methods to eliminate defects. This perfectly summarizes what we have discussed. Restricts application to manufacturing. No, Six Sigma technique can be applied in any thing. It can be a product or a service. It's not necessary that it has to be a manufacturing setup. So let's understand Six Sigma a little bit more because it's an important concept. So there is a methodology which is called DMAIC. So DMAIC stands for define, measure, analyze, improve and control. So that is the core of what Six Sigma is about, right? So Six Sigma is trying to ensure that the defects are minimized in the entire process, and there is a number to it, as I was saying. So the entire target of Six Sigma methodology is to reduce process defects to no more than 3.4 defects per million. So per million opportunities, think of it as, let's say, products, right? So let's say the company is manufacturing pens. Now, if they are manufacturing million pens, the number of permissible pens with defect is 3.4 if the company is saying that we are Six Sigma in terms of our process, right? So that is the 3.4 defects per million opportunities. That is the interpretation of it. So you have to just remember two things. What Six Sigma is, it is a methodology to reduce the number of defects, and how many defects? 3.4 defects per million, that's the permissible figure, and the methodology, which is the DMAIC cycle or method: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Okay, let's move on to the next one. A corporate employee who develops a new venture or project within their organization, taking initiative to create a distinct business entity. Now, this question has been asked multiple times in the CMAT actual test in some or the other form. Every year, as long as I remember, since the introduction of INE as a section, they have asked a question related to intrapreneurship. So the answer for this question is intrapreneur. So all of you have heard the term entrepreneur, right? Now, entrepreneur is somebody who is going solo, right, or with people, but they are basically starting a new venture from scratch. Whereas intrapreneur is somebody who is operating within the organizational boundaries. So think, let's say, somebody who is already currently working in an organization uh, says that, okay, why don't we do XYZ something, ideates that whole thing, makes a proposal for it, draws the business plan, and launches that particular thing, right? So that is what an intrapreneur is. So somebody who is operating within the organization but acting as if he or she is an entrepreneur. Moving to question 5, to ensure steady revenue throughout the year, an entrepreneur can do what? So steady revenue throughout the year. Now, there are some businesses which will continue to have steady businesses. They are not affected by, let's say, the season or any sort of cyclicity. But there will be some businesses that are like that have cyclicity. So such entrepreneurs or such businesses will have to take some measures to ensure that they have steady revenue. First is operate in multiple industries simultaneously. Maybe, let's see if we have a better option. Diversify their offerings to cater to various customer segments. Now, this is good. This is definitely better than A. I'm not saying A is wrong, but it may not be feasible also for a lot of entrepreneurs to do this where they're operating in multiple industries simultaneously, because it could be out of their core expertise. So that is why B is better than A. It says diversify the offerings to cater to various customer segments. So an automobile company, if they have, let's say, they manufacture four-wheelers, they can always think of manufacturing two-wheelers. If they're already doing two-wheelers, they can think of electric vehicles. So they can diversify their offerings so that they have steady revenue throughout. So B is better. C stays use creative marketing strategies and promotions. Again, that is something that is generally also done. It need not indicate or, let's say, create steady revenue stream for, let's say, the entrepreneur. Last is develop and follow a detailed business plan, which is what generally everybody does. So again, not related to the question directly. Moving to the next one, which stage in the adoption curve of the diffusion of innovation theory? Okay, now this theory, again, something that has been asked in the past. Diffusion of innovation theory given by Everett Rogers. Okay, now this particular theory talks about how a particular innovation gets introduced in the market and how quickly or not so quickly people adapt to that particular innovation. Is characterized by individuals who are skeptical. If you think of the meaning of the word skeptic, it's somebody who is doubtful, and adopt new innovations only after the majority has accepted them. Okay. Think of mobile phones, for example. So when the mobile phones were introduced, initially some people bought it, right? So they are sort of early adopters of the whole thing. But there are a lot of people who kept on waiting. So they kept on pushing their decision to buy a mobile phone, saying that I don't need it and so on and so forth, till it became almost a necessity for everybody. So this is how the entire theory gives the kind of people as to how they will react to certain innovation adoption. So there are innovators who are basically coming up with the whole idea, Then there are early adopters. So early adopters would be open to any new product or service that comes in the market. They will be very, very open to it. They will immediately try it out. Then comes the early majority. So that's about 34%. Late majority is 34%. Late majority is what we are looking for here, where people are waiting for others to try it out, and only after their doubts have got more or less resolved, then they move on to it. And then there are finally the laggards, right? So we're coming at the very end. It's almost that now it has become extremely common as an innovation or a product, and now people have started using it, right? So that is how the innovation adoption will happen, and that is what the theory is about. So for this particular question, the answer is going to be late majority. Right? These are the kind of people who are waiting for others to try things out, and only after their doubts etc. are done, they see that people have started using it, then they will jump onto it. Okay, but in the initial phase, it's only innovators, early adopters, and early majority. Okay. Moving to question 7, starting and sustaining a successful venture primarily depends on what? The first says access to funding. Okay, now funding is required, but think whether is it required in all the cases? No. So a founder can always have his or her own funds. They don't need to have access to funding. B says a clear vision and strong mindset. Okay, again this is important. C says availability of mentors and external support. Now let's say you don't have a mentor, but you have a very good idea, you are able to convincingly deliver it to the market. You don't need to have a mentor. It's good to have, but not necessary. External support, again, good to have, not necessary. I can eliminate this. And finally, market conditions. You see a lot of ventures get launched in markets that are not ready for that particular product or service, but they continue to put in the effort, and at some point of time things switch. So market conditions is important, but because it says starting and sustaining the venture primarily depends on, we are not going to go with that as the answer. So all of these are relevant points. We are not saying no, they are not relevant. But out of the ones, the one that makes the most sense is going to be clear vision and strong mindset. Moving to the next one, what's the primary purpose of a pitch deck in the context of startups and business ventures? So what's a pitch deck? I'm sure all of you, at least if you've not seen the whole thing, but you've seen Shark Tank. Now what happens on Shark Tank is they come and do a pitch, right? But they are doing pitch in front of TV, and that's a separate thing how it works. But when you think of the actual businesses, right, how they come up with pitches, they produce a deck, and this deck is nothing but think of it as deck of slides or document in which they have detailed out what their business idea is and how they are going to be successful, or what is their USP and things like that. First says to provide a detailed step-by-step operational plan for the business. Operation plan could be there, but again we don't in the pitch deck, that is not the core objective. So you are creating a pitch deck, let's say for your startup, and you're presenting it to, let's say, a venture capitalist. You are not going to show them the details of the entire operations that are going to happen, because maybe you're not even started it yet. So there's no operational plan that exists at this point of time. B says to summarize key aspects of the business idea and attract potential investors. Now this is the core of why you would create a pitch deck. So you create a business plan, you create a pitch deck out of it, because you don't get a lot of time to pitch your whatever idea is to the investor. So that is why it summarizes the key aspects of the business and makes it easy for the investor to decide. C says to offer a comprehensive analysis of market trends and financial projections. You may have financial projections, you may have a little bit on the analysis of the market, but it's not going to be detailed. And last says to conduct internal team meetings and share daily updates. This has got nothing to do with pitch deck. Okay. Move on to the next question. So the question says, which of the following is not one of the 7 P's of the marketing mix? Okay. Now 4 P's of marketing, again an important concept. 4 P's then eventually became 7 P's. Now which 7 P's you have to know. So there are 4 options: product, price, purpose, and people. Even if you have remotely heard of 7 P's, you should know what the answer is. But if not, let's have a quick discussion on it. So there are 7 P's. These are the 7 P's that you have. The product, price, promotion, and place. Right? These were the original 4 P's of marketing. So if somebody asks you what are the 4 P's of marketing, you will say product, price, promotion and place. The remaining ones got added later: people, processes and physical evidence. Okay, so think of, let's say, mobile phones, right, or the mobile networks, whether you have the Idea or Vodafone Idea, or let's say Airtel and things like that. Physical evidence could be the SIM card, for example, correct? So there are different things that got added to 4 P's of marketing. Initial were product, price, promotion and place. The remaining 3 are, as you can see, people, processes and physical evidence. So those are the 7 P's of marketing mix. For the question, the answer is purpose. Moving on to question 10. Okay, so let's read this out. What is the primary objective of enterprise risk management? Again, you may not have heard of this term before I just told you. Enterprise is what? Think of an organization. Risk is risk. Management is managing the risk. So enterprise would be at all levels in the enterprise. First says to eliminate all risk in an organization. Now, is it even possible to eliminate all risk? You can identify maybe most of the risk. You can control or damage control in most of the cases, but it is not possible to identify and eliminate all the risk. So this you can remove. To identify, assess and manage risk in a way that aligns with organizational objectives. This looks okay, and this looks like a nice definition of what ERM is. To focus on financial risk affecting the organization, because it says only financial, we can remove, because the risk could be anything. For example, let's say you have security risk, right? Maybe there is theft that is going on. That is not necessarily financial risk. Last says to ensure compliance with government regulations. No. So this is one of the risks. Let's say a company decides not to comply with certain government rules, they end up getting fined for that. So the risks are of different categories, right? There could be financial risk, there could be operational risk, there could be marketing risk and so on and so forth. So the only one that explains what ERM is the second option. Okay, so we'll go with that as the answer for this question. Moving to question 11, in the context of startups, what does the term unicorn refer to? Now you have to know what unicorn definition is. It's a very simple thing. You just need to remember this number. Okay, so it's a startup which is valued at $1 billion or more. We have the answer in the first option itself. B says a startup that operates in multiple industries, not really. Achieves profitability within first year, no. In fact, a lot of unicorns do not achieve profitability for a very long period. A startup that focuses exclusively on specific markets, right? So again, this can be eliminated. So the startup valued at $1 billion or more, that is the answer for the question as to who is a unicorn. Moving to 12, what is one of the most common reasons for startups or entrepreneurial failure? Okay, so why startups fail? Most of the startups end up failing, but let's understand why they fail. The first is excessive funding from investors. Now, excessive funding from investors cannot be reason for failure. If you have more funding, you as a startup founder or owner, you may not know how to use those funds, but it's not necessary that it will lead to failure. B says lack of market demand for the products or service. Clearly could be one of the reasons as to why things are not working. Maybe let's say you've created a fantastic product, but the market is not ready for that particular product. Over delegation of responsibilities to the team. Now this again not related to failure per se. This may create short-term operational issues or challenges, but not failure per se. Focusing too much on customer feedback. If you focus on customer feedback, you will have better products and service. It's not going to lead to your failure. So the only one that makes sense is option B, which is lack of market demand for the product or service. Right? So let's say, for example, think of so in the earlier era, we used to have something called as the digital assistants, right? So you have those we had those digital diaries. You can ask your parents, maybe some of them will remember, wherein you could store mobile numbers and whatever you wanted to note down and things like that. It could be used as a calculator. But if let's say a company decides to launch a product like that right now, nobody will buy it because you already have mobile phones where you can store all of this information. So then creating a startup in that space is not going to work out purely because there's no market demand right now. So that becomes the most common reason. Moving on to 13, which management thinker is widely known for emphasizing the importance of innovation as a key driver and coined the term creative destruction? Now, this again has been asked in the CMAT in the past. So, creative destruction, who coined the term? The answer for the question is Joseph Schumpeter. Okay, so not Peter Drucker, not Mintzberg, not Leschen Christiansen. Again, very big names, and you have to know what each of them are known for. So, what is, let's say, Peter Drucker is known for, or Clayton Christensen is known for. But for this particular question, creative destruction, the answer to remember is going to be Joseph Schumpeter. Moving to 14th, what does not invented here syndrome mean? Okay, not invented here. Now, even if you don't know, you can at least think about what the word means. Not invented here. So anything that I am not inventing or not invented in my geography, etc., I am not open to those kind of things. Typically referred to in an organizational context. First says an organization's preference for outsourcing all R&D. Okay, not really. They can outsource R&D. In fact, nobody should outsource the entire R&D. But that is not what not invented here syndrome is. A strategic focus on acquiring competitors' technology instead of innovating. Okay, no. A reluctance to adopt. Now, this is what we are interested in. Not invented here, so I'm not going to go for it. A reluctance to adopt ideas or solutions that are developed externally. Okay, so this is what not invented here stands for. The rejection of employee suggestions within the organization, no, right? I mean, that happens far more than we imagine. So, not invented here is not dealing with it. So, the answer for the question is option C, that you are rejecting any certain suggestion, or it could be some idea or innovation just because you have not produced it, right? So, externally, it's coming from an external source. And that brings us to the last question. Which of the following best defines creativity in the context of business and innovation? Okay, now simple question, but again, let's put a definition to what creativity is. Implementing ideas that strictly follow traditional business plan? No. When you are innovating or doing something creative, you want to move out of that. Copying successful ideas from competitors for efficiency? No. Again, that's not very creative. Though people there are very few limited original ideas that exist. People typically borrow on somebody's idea, but they of course build something different out of it. The ability to generate unique and original ideas that add value, right? So that clearly answers the question as to what creativity is. Last is the focus on technical problem solving without exploring new possibilities. So all creativity is about exploring new problems, exploring new solutions to existing problems, and coming up with unique ways of addressing that particular issue by adding some sort of value. So that's what creativity is all about. So great, that brings us to the end of this 8-part series that we had. I hope you found this useful and it will help you in your CMAT Innovation and Entrepreneurship section. Please watch the other videos from the CMAT, the entire past year question paper series also that we have. I hope again you found this useful. Wish you all the best and I hope you do well. Thanks for joining. I'll see you soon in some other video.